There seems to be a little confusion with drilling these holes straight on flasks. So I'm just going to go through my procedure the way I do it. Seems to be pretty quick and easy. I take these wood flasks, and there again, we know I like these wood flasks. I screw them together. So I just got some brackets on here, so they're held in alignment. And I'll do them as a set. Now I do make sure that I take them over and set them down on the bottom board, and the bottoms of these are relatively flat so that we don't have any rock on them. Because if they're rocking, they're not going to drill straight. So I make sure the bottoms are flat. In between, as long as they match up real close and don't rock, I'm happy with them, and I'll go back later and flatten the tops a little bit, just so it makes no difference other than they sit nicer on a follow board. So once they're clamped together, they're in alignment, they can't go anyplace, I start real small and just start step drilling them up. So we're putting 1/2-inch pins in these, and I didn't even mark them for a layout. We're just going to do close. And this can be done on a drill press. That's why I've got them unbolted and everything. I will bolt them back down to cut the slots in what will be one side or the other in the cope half on top. But this is all there is. And I start them with a center drill. That way it doesn't really matter if they're off a little bit. Even as they drill through, if they start to walk off a little bit, if they're drilled as a set, and you have trouble because you need a longer drill bit as you go through. Once I get down to the bottom, I ream those with just an underside, just under a 1/2-inch reamer, so that my pins are a friction fit. If I have to go back and put a pin in to lock them, or a roll pin, usually I'll put a roll pin in to lock them if they're loose. But if I get a good friction fit underneath, why they'll never gonna move. And I do have to unbolt the two because my reamer's not long enough. I've got one that we shortened the shank up on for, maybe for this, for whatever reason. Anyway, if you start them with a center drill, you're centered up. And then if you start small and start walking them down through, why it's going to, they're going to self-align, and as they open up, they're going to get, these are just a couple of small, and we do have to raise this up. Because these are just barely long enough, a 6-inch bit for these particular flasks. But once you get the first one through, why then you've only got this much space and then this much space that it has to drop down through. So they stay pretty well aligned. Out of travel. And there's all 4 of them pretty much perfectly aligned. So I'll just go back and do the other side with this size bit while we're here. And then I just walk them on up. This one won't quite go through all the way. It's a little bit shorter drill than a full 6-inch drill. So Now, with the taper, the drill bit tends to want to walk out and away from them. In reality, it doesn't matter because we're cutting a slot in one side and stepping up in small increments like this. Why the bigger drills are stiffer, so they'll align a little bit better and straighten those holes up a little bit more. So we'll see if I'm talking through my butt or not here, but you know, the ones that I've done this way have not been a alignment issue at all, so I don't anticipate these being one either. And those are about the biggest I've got in 6-inch long bits unless I go to 12 inchers. And I don't know if there's enough travel underneath the middle of the head to raise it all the way up. So I just go to a small standard one. I can get about the first 3 done, and once I get them to that size, then we'll probably break them down and go ahead and do the last holes. Now I'm just going to go through the first 3. I'm going to leave the bottom one because the drill bit's not long enough anyway, so I'm only going to go through the first 3 with this size bit, and then we'll walk it on up to our full 1/2 inch diameter down to this one. Then we'll go ahead and separate the 2 halves, and I'll finish drilling the last bottoms and get them to final size and ream them. Maybe we should pick a drill bit to run a little bit rounder. So those are both to full 1/2 inch size. I'm going to go ahead and cut my pin stock right now and go ahead and turn the ends of them so they're smooth and everything, just to verify the fit that we've got through the upper 2 holes. Once make sure we've got enough fit there, we've got enough clearance there for them to slide fairly easily but still hold alignment. Then we'll go back, separate the 2 halves, and then we'll finish out the bottom 2, and we'll go back with this is a full 1/2 inch. We'll go back with a slightly smaller drill, and then we'll ream them. Alright, well, I got my pins cut for these, and they fit pretty nicely. And that's just about what I want. So the tops are drilled to the proper diameter. Now this one, where I had the bit wobbling so bad, that one crooked bit, why, it's a little bit bigger, but that's the side that I'm going to use to slot out anyway. So it's negligible. They're going to be perfect. Perfect, perfect, perfect. So now I'm going to go ahead and take them apart. The tops are basically done. I will leave them oriented on the table the same way. We'll go ahead and finish drilling and reaming the bottom ones and push our pins in, and then we'll go back and cut the slot in the coat on the one end, and this is a done deal. Other than then, I still got to go ahead and go back, smooth out and round the corners on the flasks, and smooth out the top so when it's flipped over on a follow board to ram the bottom side, if we're using the match plate, why it doesn't rock. I don't like them to rock. It doesn't matter, but I don't like it. So I'll go ahead, flatten it out, and then once it's all smoothed up a little bit, why then we'll put a couple of coats of shellac on it and it'll be done and ready to go. Now this flask has been marked for orientation, so we know which way it goes back together. And we piloted the top hole all the way through for alignment, so we use it as our guide bushing. Go ahead and drill through the bottom with this size. Probably walk up 1 or 2 more steps just because I don't want to use the bit that I had, so we may go back and go down 1 size smaller, and then we can ream it. That'll be just right. Okay, that should be all we need. So now we can go back. We'll go ahead and press the pins in, and we'll check our alignment, see how close we are just that way, and then we'll go back and cut our slot in the cope. of those may be a little bit too tight yet. Took one of my crappy adjustable squares, just put it in between and just squeezed it to support it, and then I just drove them on through. So they look like that installed, and I want to face them this way when I'm working with them, so we're going to cut the slot on this end here for no other reason other than I marked the cope and the drag of what they were on the back side. So we'll just slot this one out here, and I will clamp it down to the mill table to do that. I'll just throw a couple of strap clamps on there and we'll run an end mill through there. We'll show a little bit of that. But as far as alignment on them, they're nice and tight. And that's the way they fit. So rammed up with sand, why they change a little bit, you know, and as this wood's pretty dry, I've got it pretty well situated. But they swell a little bit and stuff as you ram sand in them to them, so they spread and move a little bit. So that, how tight they are, will change a little bit. That's why you got to slot the one edge on the top. But that's pretty much all there is to it. So I'm not expecting an alignment issue at all. Like I say, I'll go back and clamp it to the mill table and bob those out of there. But then mechanically these flasks are done, other than the cosmetic stuff and to seal them. Like I say, we'll round these edges over real nice, smooth them down where my joints are all crooked and wonky and stuff, and then get some finish on it. So I got one more of these to do after that, but we'll get this one finished up first. Okay, well, I see one flaw, which makes no difference at all functionally, but cosmetically it looks kind of ugly. If you look, I'm way off center on this bottom pin especially. It's because I've got this bracket on there crooked. It's leaning way over. So mechanically, as far as functionality, not going to affect a thing, but looks a little odd. So anyway, I'll take this back over to the bench and we'll put them together. I'll round over these edges a little bit here, and it'll be ready to finish out the wood. Okay, well, we got a flask done except to put light sand on it just by hand and then a coat of finish on it. So I've numbered these, of course, like I do the rest of them. This is a 6, or number 6, and now I'm making flasks in sets of 2s type of thing, and that way I can cast up a couple of the same item. Now the reason for doing these as opposed to some of the other ones is they're a little bit shallower, and I just do different sizes kind of to adapt to what I'm casting, to use the least amount of sand and give me the best castings for them. These are just a little bit bigger than this one, this last one that I cast, or the last one that I set up here quite a while back. This is my number 5 flask. This one's just a little bit bigger inside dimension, and you know, that just happens to be the way I set up that particular flask. So the question comes about, and all that's left on this is I'm going to hand sand it a little bit, and then I'll put a couple of coats of shellac on it, is the way I finish them out. The question comes about, is it worthwhile to spend all this time and effort on a wooden flask? I personally think it is. The wood is stuff that I'll normally, I'm either tearing something apart, or I will go down and buy several 2x4s or 2x6s, whatever it is, and I just set them back in the corner and let them dry out, and then I'll plane them down to thickness. So this flask is a little bit shallower than some of the other stuff that I do, and for most of the things I do, this is about as shallow as I want to get. What I will probably, one of the things I will probably cast in this is I'm going to redo match plate vibrator pattern, match plates. They take so little sand and everything, and I'm casting them in one of my older flasks that started out as a snap flask. It's got older style hardware on it. It's just a heavier flask all the way around. So for me, it's worthwhile to take the time and build these flasks. Now I've got one more like this I have to drill the pins on, just like I just showed in this video. And then I've got two bigger ones that I've got to fit up. And I've got a couple of castings that I do that will actually replace a couple of the older, smaller flasks that I've got that I've had for years and years. And I'll show you a couple of those. So, to me, it's worthwhile. Guys talk about burning them up. Yes, they will burn. You'll get burn marks on them. They last me virtually for years. I started out, and these have been modified too. I started out with several flasks like this. You know, crappy pin setups and everything else. I still use these occasionally for oddball stuff if I'm doing a one-off thing that I'm probably not going to do very many, or I'm going to decide if that's the best way to cast them. And I've got these in several thicknesses and everything. These flasks right here, this flask is probably at least 15 years old. And I've got another shallower one in the same size sitting up here too. So to me it's worthwhile. They last virtually forever. As far as the action on these, to show the machining that we did on them. Now these have not been graphited up or anything like that, but and once I use them a little bit, you find out where they pull. I got a little brush with graphite on it here, but that's the way they end up and lay out with the pins on them. And I've gone ahead, I've numbered them, and then I mark this side and this side just to help me with orientation. If I'm setting up a match plate to do one in a particular flask like this, I will normally take the same color paint and I'll mark the match plate too. So there's no question at all to me how they go together, although this is the way I do them. My cutout pin is on this side. It pretty much always goes underneath my left or my right thumb. When I lift them, numbering's on the right hand side, so I show it. And if I got a match plate sitting on, the match plate vibrator sits right here on the right hand front corner. So it's pretty self-evident to me the way they go, but I mark them anyway, just makes them stupid proof. So anyway, that's the way I finish out flasks. You'll probably, next time you'll probably see these flasks, they'll be painted up, or at least this one will have shellac on it. I'll be starting to cast with it, and I'll show it again and try and remember and make mentions. This is one of the last flasks that I built. Otherwise, these are pretty well done, or this one's pretty well done. I'm going to spend the rest of the day machining at least two of the three other ones. I'm waiting for some screws to hold hardware on one of the larger ones. I didn't have quite enough screws, so, and my supplier didn't have, I got a partial box from him, so I've got to run back up there and get some more screws and a couple other things. But that pretty much finishes them up. Like I say, I'll do a light hand sand on this and shellac it up, and it's a done deal. So that's the way I machine out the flasks. They, you know, it's not an alignment problem if you take your time and do them that way. Couldn't really leave you hanging with this job just almost done. So there's that 6A is the flask that I finished machining yesterday, and it's what's shown in the video. I got the other three done. There's the 7B, which is the same size as the 6, or 7A and 7B, flask number 7. Same size as number 6, and then we've got two more bigger ones here. And I said that I just made flasks in kind of whatever size I thought was the most appropriate. That's really not true. I kind of go off of a standard flask size for industry, and I don't know where I got this list, maybe out of one of Chastain's books. But there's the Foundry flask dimensions. I don't hold exactly to that. You know, they'll vary a little bit just depending on what the material is and how it cuts, and you know how accurate I am measuring it out and laying it out. So there's some variation in them. But now I try and build at least 2 flasks in every size when I'm building the sets of flasks. Just because that gives me a little more versatility. I can cast 2 of the same things if I'm doing loose patterns. If I'm doing match plates, sometimes they'll match up, sometimes they won't. I don't get too excited about it. So anyway, there's the end of the flask building for right now. So hope you found it useful. Comments, suggestions, leave them in the comment section for me below, guys. And as always, thanks for taking the time to watch.